Hi folks, today I'm going to show you a year in review on our strawberry plants. This video is brought to you in part by our Patreon contributors. Our top contributors are TrueAquaponics.com, GreenLifePlanet.net, GlassBottleOutlet.com, and GrowPockets.com. Thanks for your support. Hi everyone. Last fall I took all of our strawberries out of the greenhouse because of our white fly problem and put everything into cold storage in our basement in our house. So this is my bag of strawberry roots, and they look like they overwintered fine. There's no rotting in them or disease. So we're going to transplant these back into some of the deep water culture beds and also back into some of the media beds. With the deep water culture beds, I've been putting them into my grow grips, and I usually save out some of them that are in pretty bad shape and have come to the end of their useful lives. This one's been chewed on pretty good and is starting to fall apart. So once the strawberry plant grows in it, the roots usually go completely through the grow grip, and or will the base become so large that it just stretches them out and will finally ruin them. So this is a good end-of-life use for something like the grow grip. So nothing special at all. I put it in there. I like to keep the crowns up above the water line, so something about like that usually looks pretty good. And you can see it really gets stuffed in there. And then just sort of stick it into the hole like that. And that's all it takes. Some of these crowns are actually quite large. I think I might save this one and put it in the media bed instead, and try to save some of these smaller ones for the deep water culture. I stuck the raft up on the side of the bed here just so it won't float away from me while I'm putting things into it. It's another large one. And these grow grips will have enough holding power to hold the plants in place, mainly because they don't grow very tall, and the roots get fairly large, so they sort of act as a counterweight in there, hold the plant into place. But you can see they'll hold just fine in there. This particular variety that I grow is called the Whopper, and it's a June bearing plant, so you essentially just get strawberries once a year. So from an economic standpoint, if you're trying to grow commercially in aquaponics, probably isn't very feasible to do it, since you're only producing once in a year, and then the whole rest of the year that area is being used just to get energy back into the plant. Alright, now over to the media bed. This bed doesn't get quite as much light as some of my other beds, so I put my strawberries in here. They do like a lot of light, but they seem to do just fine with what they get in here. Now, these plants are a little bit larger than the ones I put into the deep water culture. That's because they're a couple years old, so they may not produce as much fruit as the smaller, younger ones, but they will send out a lot of runners and allow me to propagate them into new plants in the future. So that's 18 plants put into the media beds and 45 plants put into the deep water culture beds. So we'll check back in a couple of weeks and see how they're doing. Here we are 1 week after putting these in, and they've started sending up their new leaves. think I have just one that didn't make it. The ones in the media bed also look pretty good. This one actually has a little flower on it, so we'll nip these off before it sucks all the energy out of the plant. Need to get some more leaves on it before it starts to flower. The plants that I put into the media beds are already blossoming, and they're large enough where I'll let them continue blossoming and they start setting their fruits. Since it's still the end of winter, there's no bees out or anything, so I essentially hand pollinate these. I can't find my electric toothbrush, so I'm basically just hitting each flower by hand and moving from plant to plant. The strawberry plants in the deep water culture beds are not quite as large. They're doing okay. It was really a smaller rootstock that I put into here, but some of them are starting to blossom, and I'll let them keep doing their thing. I'm really trying to get my fruit out of these before the fruit fly infestation that we usually get each year outside. So my goal is to get berries done in here before the fruit flies come. It's been 70 days since originally putting these in, and you can see they've been blossoming, and there's a whole bunch of fruit that's coming in. There's also a few runners that are also growing, so those you definitely want to snip off because you don't want the energy from the plant going into those. You want it to go into these berries. But there's still plenty of flowers coming in. To pollinate them, I just sort of brush the flowers a little bit, and that seems to be enough to get the berries to show full pollination. I don't have many defects showing up, so they've been doing pretty well with their pollinating by human hand like that. The plants in the deep water culture bed are doing really well. They had a slow start, but have caught up with the other plants. They're blossoming nicely. The fruit on them isn't quite as large yet, so I guess they are still a little bit behind. They're also sending out their runners, so clip those off. You can see they're really growing like crazy. And as I look at this one, you can see there's actually some aphids on here, so I'll have to keep an eye out for that. Even though it's the same water circulating, oddly enough, these are showing just a little bit of iron deficiency. So I'll probably bump up the iron in the system a little bit more. I'm running at about 2.5 parts per million. Usually like to get a little bit higher. And overall, the root structure on the plants look fairly good. A little bit of browning, but for the most part they seem to be pretty happy. If you follow them long enough, if you see carpenter ants in your system, it's usually a good sign that they're farming aphids somewhere. So if you don't bother them, they can lead you right to the source of where their aphids are. It's been 77 days since originally planting, and I now have one strawberry ready. These are going to be done in another day or so. So we're going to pick this one and check it out. Nice and red throughout. Probably could have ripened one more day, but overall this one looks very good. The growing season is definitely over, and I didn't do a whole lot of recording over the summer with these, but basically they have sent out all their runners. A lot of those have rerooted, some of them just got stuck into the air and dried out, and the leaves start dying off once winter starts coming around. So I'm going to pull all these plants and put them in a bag and put them in cold storage, basically inside of my basement, and that will preserve them and get them ready again for next year. I could probably just leave these in the beds and they'd be fine, but I like to clean things up and break the plants apart, see what's in here, get all the dead growth out of here and get the bed ready from scratch again. So you can see they have a fairly good root mass on them. A lot of organic material in here. Some new root growth. This is the older root growth. And there's actually a couple of plants in this one. So here's a runner mixed in with it. So usually I just cut off the older leaves. I'll leave that one young one on there. It won't make any difference though. And in the spring, this crown will start up and send out some new leaves. You can see this first crown that I pulled out. There's actually 2 plants in here, and you can also divide them up. Some roots left on that one, he'll be fine, and this one will also do fine. This one here is a runner that came from another plant. I don't know what this part's called, the umbilical cord or whatever, but the mama plant's way over there, and it sent a few others in here. So nice root structure again, little crown, and we'll just cut off all this excess, and we have one ready for next year. Now this one's a few years old, pretty good size. Usually once they get older, I don't like to save them. They just don't seem to produce quite as well, so I like the ones that are only 1 or 2 years old. So even though it looks massive and healthy, which it really is, you can break it up into some smaller ones, but it just becomes unmanageable. You can see this is all new root growth, and this is all the older original ones. And it's just easier to work with the smaller plants. Alright, that bed is all nicely cleaned up, ready for next year. Ended up with a bucket that had 47 good plants in it, and a whole pile of waste that will go into the compost pile. I don't remember how many plants I started off with this in bed. It was probably 10 or 12, but I'll look it up and see what I can find in the older videos. The plants in a deep water culture also do really well. They spread like crazy too. They don't stay contained in their raft beds. In fact, some of these crossed over into the other deep water culture bed and started on their own in these other rafts that I was just using as fillers, because I had the tomato plants in this raft. So we'll harvest all these, see what they look like, and see how many plants we get out of here. One of the issues with the plants in deep water, you can see that the roots are really starting to rot a little bit, but that's partly because I've reduced the amount of air going into these beds for the winter, and the water's getting a little too cold for them. But some of these look really nice. Nice root growth, the plant looks good. These are going to be perfect to get for starters for next year. It's more of a personal preference, but I rather grow these in my media beds than in deep water. Both yield about the same in the plants. These get a little bit slower start, but you can see how messy it gets in here, and all this debris just starts falling down into the bottom of the beds. Plus they get a little more rot on the roots too. Now I did put these in the grow grips. You can see this large plant here. There's still a grow grip around it, but it's been totally enveloped by the roots. As I pointed out earlier in the season, these are really sacrificial at this point. I usually pick some grow grips that are near the end of their lifespan anyways and use them to hold the plants in, so that works really well. The plant holds in. Once it gets too big, it just sort of sits on the rafts anyway, and the grow grips do become ineffective at that point, but they work good as a temporary holder to get the plants started. So thanks for watching. I did miss a few clips. I don't know what I did with them on the plants once they were in full production, but I got several pounds of strawberries from these plants, And then towards the end, I just didn't film anymore over the summer once the plants weren't doing anything. But they just basically grew and sent out their runners. So not very exciting to see, but I apologize for not getting every piece of footage that I could in there. If you like this type of video, I'd appreciate you subscribing to our channel and maybe giving it a thumbs up. And once again, thanks for watching.